You're on. Let's go.
All right, are we good?
Well, yes, you are.
We're
good to go.
We're the rookies. We're going to introduce everything tonight. This is BioCare, and we have 4 doctors that have joined us, and we're going to look into high blood pressure and also heart disease and things like that. So we're excited about listening and
we have questions too.
Yes, we have questions, and so we just want to jump right in to give plenty of time for the doctors to weigh in on some of these things. So we just like to introduce. Yeah, I'm Bill, and this is Kathy, my wife.
Pastor Bill and Kathy, and we have a Tuesday night show on Truth Be Told.
Yeah, and it's Look Up, and it's on at 6 o'clock Central,
7 o'clock Eastern.
7 o'clock Eastern on the Truth Be Told Radio Network. So there we are. So yes, I guess the first thing to do would be to introduce Dr. Rodriguez and have him introduce his other doctors that are part of this program, and then we'll get moving.
Okay, thank you very much,
Pastor
Bill and,
Hi, Doctor.
And Kathy. Thank you very much for introducing me. How are you doing? And yes, you're in Truth Be Told Radio Network, and we also, BioCare Hospital and myself, I'm Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez. I'm Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And we have a show also every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Truth Be Told Radio Network. And you can get us also in the social media of your choice. We have a blog, we have podcasts, we have probably over 150 hours of programming in which we discuss health issues, health preservation, maintenance, prevention, and so on. I think this is very important, and it could be very profitable for everyone that wants to listen, because it is very important. I tell people all the time that health is just like money. The same way you save your money, the same way if you overspend your money, you're going to be in trouble. It's the same if you waste your health. Health has to be preserved, and not only preserved, but it has you have to get more and more, because it can be a lifesaver at a certain point. One good example was just the COVID epidemics, and those that were in better health condition were the ones that were able to come out of it, first of all, alive, because we were looking at a disease that killed a lot of the people that we love. And we have to accept that many of them were not in the best health possible. So improving your health is very important. And in the same way that people plans for the future financially, you have your 401k, you have your savings, you have your investments, and so on. It's the same thing. You can help here and there and there. Get a couple of pounds off, get your vitamin D checked, get a little bit of exercise every day, and make sure you're very healthy, because it definitely can make a big difference in survival, in well-being, and in life enjoyment. That's the name of the game.
We so agree, Dr. Rodriguez. And last time we were with you all, I believe it was Dr. Romero that suggested as we get older, we should get vitamin E. So Bill and I went out to the health food store because we're older, and we did get some high quality vitamin E. So we're doing vitamin D, as you all recommend, and vitamin E now. And for example, today we just went out and planted a lemon tree. So we try to get our exercise.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you all know, but Pastor Bill is 68 and I'm 71. So we really try hard, and we are so grateful for our health. And I'm very grateful for this subject too, because so many people deal with cardiovascular and high blood pressure. But back to, did you want to introduce your staff, Dr.
Yeah,
Rodriguez?
I'm going to introduce the staff, and I'm going to tell that you just mentioned Dr. Melba Romero. She's one of our senior physicians, and she's been with us
Yes.
for many years. I lost count how many. And we have worked together and discussed many issues. And I think we all share very much the same type of medical philosophy of prevention and health maintenance and so forth. Because every time we see a patient, you say, "Oh, I wish I would have been able to talk to this person 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or last week." That can make a difference. And Dr. Romero, you just mentioned, she's been very active in not only doing her work as a physician, but helping people to know more and prevent more and so on. She's always talking about exercise. She's always talking about antioxidation.
Yes.
That's where vitamin E comes in. And in prevention. And vitamin E, by the way,
Yes.
comes very handy when we're talking about heart disease prevention and high blood pressure. So let me introduce you, Dr. Romero, and I will introduce you later the rest of the staff. Melba, you're on.
Hi,
All right.
hi, everybody. I'm happy to be
Hi,
here
Dr. Romero.
and with such an interesting subject because cardiovascular disease is the number one killer, more than cancer,
Yes.
accident, guns, you name it. Number one killer in the world is cardiovascular disease. So this is going to be an interesting and a fun subject. Hi.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
as long as
Also,
we have you right now, I wanted to ask. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Rodriguez. Sorry.
no. You ask your question. Ask your
Okay.
question.
Well, you
Kathy.
mentioned vitamin D is good for cardiovascular disease, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Romero. I was wondering, what about vitamin K combined with vitamin D?
Okay.
That's a very good option, and we can
I
talk
believe
about
it's
it.
K2.
Let
Okay.
me pass part of that to Dr. Arteaga. Dr. Arteaga is another one of our doctors here. And today we also have
Hi, everyone.
host, okay, here's
Hello.
Dr. Arteaga, and she's also one of our physicians. As you can see, she's very young and lovely. So she's one of the youngest members of the staff, but nevertheless, she's already traveled around and done her own research, and once again shares our points of view, and I'm sure she can have a word or two about the subject that we're talking about.
Of course, I will during the discussion that we're gonna um, do in a minute.
Okay, and then Dr. Jose Luis Saavedra. He's a
Hello.
physiotherapist. He's not only an MD, but he's a physiotherapist. But lately, he got because he's been very close to alternative medicine actually all through his life. I met him when he was 1 year old at an alternative
Oh my
medical
goodness.
clinic in Tijuana. I mean, he could hardly walk and so forth. So I have seen him grow and develop to be a doctor and then to be a physiotherapist. And now he's been doing his master's in nutrition, in human nutrition and nutrition management. And one of the areas of interest in his case is elderly and degenerative diseases. So I want to welcome him to the show, and he's one of the consultants, one of the permanent consultants of IBC, of BioCare Hospital. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Hello.
As Dr. Rodriguez was saying, he's known me all my life. All these gray hairs weren't there, of course. And I've went into the field of medicine and afterwards did physical medicine and rehabilitation. And recently, as mentioned, masters in supplements and nutrition. So just a little insight on the combination between vitamin D3 and K2, which was the question there.
Yes.
When you take vitamin D by itself, it tends to make the calcium deposit on the arteries and the veins. So it is not advised to take it by itself because you need a balance in the body. And that's actually where vitamin K2 comes in, because vitamin K2 makes the
Good.
calcium uh, stick to the bone and not to the arteries. So it will, to a certain degree, prevent arteriosclerosis and, of course, heart disease. But I guess we'll go deeper.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Wow.
That's good to know. I actually have a bottle of D3 with K2, so I really wanted to know what that was, if it really was good for heart disease and for this subject, or how that works. So thank you very much.
Well, that is the best combination up to this point with the current medical research, current literature, sorry, and you need to take it together because that is what you're trying to avoid. The deposit of calcium in the arteries, you want to have it deposited in your bones. And vitamin D is now considered more than a vitamin, a hormone. It interacts in almost 1,000 reactions in the body. So having not minimal levels, but optimal levels of vitamin D is what you're always striving for. And since we mostly work inside now, we get little exposure to the sun. And as you might know, the best way for our bodies to make vitamin D is to have sun exposure. So working in the office all day, there might be a need for supplementation. As Dr. Rodriguez said, it's wise, of course, advisable to check your levels and go from there. But usually the prescribed doses are more than adequate, and there's not too much risk of overdoing it. But you still need to check your levels.
Yeah, and here is something that I want to. Yeah, let me add this because this is very important for the audience. We talk about vitamin D and we say this and that and the other, but it's very important for people to know that you can go to your doctor and the next time you have a checkup, the next time you're going to do some blood work, the next time you talk to your doctor, you can ask your doctor, I want to see what my vitamin D level is. It's very simple. It's very like any other blood test. You can say, what is my sugar level? What is my hemoglobin level, etc. You can ask for vitamin D. But it's good that you know that, yes, it can be done. Second, that it is inexpensive. And third, that's going to be your guide to get to those optimum levels that Dr. Saavedra was talking about. Because many people say, oh, it's normal, because they're actually normal is considered 30 or 40, but that's low. Let's say, to make it simple, I think it's a very simple way to measure it, because if you go from 0 to 100, 50 would be acceptable, and more than 50 would be very good. But less than 50, I would start supplementing and supplement. I've seen people that have 14 or 20, okay, and they are in problems. And it was very obvious, again, with the COVID, because vitamin is a lot more than a vitamin. It is actually a hormone. And if you look at the chemical structure, it resembles a lot of other hormones. So it's very important to know that, yes, I can ask my doctor, what is my vitamin D level? And with that, I can act with a lot more confidence.
Right. And it's so important for the listener to know about the component with the K2 and vitamin D. So that's really important for cardiovascular disease.
So let's ask the question of, what would be the symptoms of someone who is having, a problem with their cardiovascular, with their heart and things? What would be some of those symptoms?
Because it's called the silent killer. So are there any symptoms? What would you need to look for? And if you wanted to start out, maybe Dr. Arteaga?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, most of the time it's a silent killer. So some or most of the patients won't have any symptom. But of course, you can start with a headache. You can start having retention of fluid. or probably not, or having certain, or just going to the doctor because you don't feel well, like all of a sudden you're just feeling different than in the past time. And well, you just go in and check yourself because something is wrong with you. You just don't know exactly what kind of symptoms are you dealing with. But it can start from a headache. It can start with fluid in your feet, getting more edema or swollen legs, swollen hands, and or just finding out that, oh, I want to go and check out with my doctor what's going on with myself, like Dr. Rodriguez mentioned. And well, they take your blood pressure, and those levels are high. And without knowing, you just your levels start going up.
Okay.
Would any of the other
Another-
doctors like to add anything?
Hi.
Dr. Romero.
Hi. High blood pressure is like, as we mentioned, the number one killer. Cardiovascular disease is number one killer. And high blood pressure is like the signal of this situation, of this problem. Um, uh, you ask, how do I know if it's a silent killer? How do I know, or how do I find out that I have high blood pressure? There are risk factors, just risk factors that are typical for a person. One, um, your family history. If your parents, or if high blood pressure runs in the family, check check yourself. Your age. If when a man is usually like older than 65, women older than 64, even before that, you can check that out. But usually the typical thing is the risk factors is like 60, number 60. And so you need to be checked. If you're a man, it's more frequent that high blood pressure will affect men, but it affects both genders, but more frequently in men. And your race, like African American, Hispanics are in more have a higher risk of presenting high blood pressure. And if you have chronic kidney disease, those five things are very important. Just they are well, very of the individual. And there are other risk factors that have to do with lifestyle. Those five risk factors can actually not be changed, because um, for obvious reasons. But there are other risk factors that can be like preventive or changed. Would be the diet, the exercise, your physical activity, your weight. If you're obese, if you're past your ideal body weight, you can work on that. If you drink alcohol, if you smoke, cigarette smoking, your cholesterol and triglyceride levels are very important. If you have diabetes, if stress, too much stress also makes a difference. So those things can be changed, and you can prevent situations when those.
I have a
Yes.
Oh, I was just going to piggyback on what you said. Too much stress.
Uh-huh.
Could a stressful event trigger high blood pressure to continue? Could it start it up for the first time and then you always have
Okay.
high blood pressure?
The example that comes to my mind is pregnancy. There are women that present because of the stress of the pregnancy and the effect of the hormones and all that, and the weight gain and the fluid retention, can present high blood pressure. And once that stress situation goes or leaves, they go back to their normal blood pressure. But that's a warning sign that in the future that women can develop high blood pressure. If you go through a stressful situation and your blood pressure elevates, it can be temporary, just because of the shock of the moment and all that. But you can go back to normal, but it's also a warning sign that you can develop high blood pressure
That's good to
permanently.
know.
So that's very important. And I forgot to
Okay.
mention, I don't remember if I mentioned that diet, of course, has to do also
Yes.
with your blood pressure, especially if you, we mentioned before that anything that's white, we need to stay away from it. So,
Mhm.
so sodium would be one of them. Sodium, a diet high in salt. So, and you know, an unhealthy diet.
When go ahead, honey.
Yeah, I was just going to say that no offense, but sometimes when I visited the doctor, my blood pressure would go high. But I know that blood pressure does go up and down quite a bit. What are we talking about as far as what is high for, like a man, and what's high for a woman as far as blood pressure numbers?
The white coat syndrome. It happens a lot of times. White coat.
Right.
It doesn't
He
mean
has
that
it.
you have high blood pressure. It's just the moment, you know. But it's very important. How do we check our blood pressure? Blood pressure should the ideal way of checking it is at nighttime when you go to sleep. You're in bed, like 5 minutes after you're relaxed in bed, 5-10 minutes, check your blood pressure, write it down. And in the first thing in the morning, before you get out of bed, check your blood pressure and see what the numbers are. The trend is very important, and you should check it for about a week to 2 weeks, and keep the numbers, and keep a chart exactly, and that's the way to go, because blood pressure varies during the day depending on what you're doing, the activity, etc. It will vary. So, but it's important that in the resting times at nighttime and first thing in the morning, be checked. A person that suffers from high blood pressure will have elevated numbers during those periods. So, it's important to have that. So, just one elevated reading doesn't make the diagnosis. Okay, so it's very important to keep track on that.
I have a question for whoever would like to answer it. It might sound simplistic. I'm not sure. I just wanted to know, does high blood pressure come from having carotid, or having your arteries with plaque, thickened with plaque? Does that cause the high blood pressure?
Yes,
Dr. Rodriguez.
Yes, actually, it is probably a little bit more complicated than that. People that have plaque tend to have high blood pressure. Think of the vascular system as a closed circulatory system where fluid goes through thanks to a pump, which is the heart, that pushes the blood through the blood vessels. And if the blood vessels are pliable, if the blood vessels have good patency, good caliber, of course, nothing is going to happen. But if the arteries are hardened, if they are not pliable, if they have plaque, the pressure that the heart has to exert in order to push the blood through those damaged blood vessels is going to produce hypertension. Now, as I was telling you with the checking of the vitamin D levels, one thing I'd like to tell people today is something which is very important. We are talking about a silent killer. Let's make a little analogy. I'm telling you that somebody in your neighborhood has been. What you do is you're going to up your vigilance and your awareness of any possible intruders. If I tell you that there is a silent killer running around your life, well, you have to become vigilant. You have to be aware of that.
Right.
So I tell people, make sure you check your blood pressure every now and then. You don't have to do it every week or not even every month, but every time you have the chance. Sometimes I have gone to the mall, for example, and I see people checking the blood pressure. Well, I'll do it. If I find any question, then it's time to go to the doctor. If you have a friend that has their own little gadget and he tells you, you want me your blood pressure check, sure. Just be aware that that thing is around us. So we have to make sure that we are doing something about it, being vigilant. And a lot of these things start because of food. There is an inequivocal association between a lot of all these diseases and our lifestyle. And lifestyle, of course, includes our food. So it's very important to make sure. If you look at yourself in your mirror and you are either overweight or obese, and chances are that you will be, because in America, 2/3 of the population, 2/3 are overweight or obese, then there is a chance that you might have a cardiovascular problem in progress. Again, you just become vigilant, you're going to watch it, and then you can make your lifestyle changes accordingly. And that's going to elongate your life, and it's going to let you live your life to the fullest for as long as you live, not
And
with
healthy.
a stroke,
It's so
not with a heart
important.
attack.
Right.
Now, that brings up a question that I have too. Just because someone is overweight, does that mean that's a problem? Could a person who's not overweight still have this problem?
Definitely yes, and that's why these awareness and vigilance are so important, because it is not that you are overweight. The problem with overweight is not cosmetic. The problem of overweight is that normally tells a story. It normally tells you that you might not be eating right, that you might be eating too much, that you might be eating the wrong foods. Not necessarily. Look at a sumo wrestler. Okay, they are grossly overweight, but they do not have this type of a problem because of the type of lifestyle that they have. So yes, you see some people that are so big and enormous, but but the type of work, the type of food, the type of lifestyle is good for them. So I'm not saying that being obese or overweight is necessarily a problem, but it is a big warning symptom.
True.
Okay. Well, let me ask something of Dr. Saavedra. I was thinking of, okay, somebody's doing everything they need to do, but Kathy was familiar with an individual in her neighborhood, and he took a trip, had a blood clot that he didn't know about, and it took his life.
He was in his 50s.
Yeah.
And he took a long car trip, only stopped for gas. He was very athletic, rode his bike everywhere, walked everywhere. He was driving down to Florida from Wisconsin, barely stopped, got to his son's house in Florida, sat down on a chair, and he had a blood clot and died right there.
So I don't know if this works into cardiovascular, but it seems like blood clots are, they just develop, and maybe they're more the silent killer also. What would be your opinion, doctor?
Well, the fact that an individual practices exercise or even is an athlete regularly doesn't necessarily mean he is the most healthy person. And as an example, you have professional bodybuilders. These guys, they over indulge in protein, and they might take in some supplements or even some steroids or something, and they build this physique that to the eye is massive and probably beautiful to some people, but they might not be healthy. So with athletes, it all depends on the nutrition, like Dr. Rodriguez was saying. Athletes tend to overindulge on carbohydrates because they might think or they do need them because of their particular sport, or because they don't know any better. So if you go to a race, you might see people having their carb party, like carb loading, they call it, right? Carb loading party before
Carb loading,
right.
yes.
you
Sure.
burn all that carbohydrate, right? And as new research comes out, metabolic diseases, where diabetes is like one of them, but also heart disease, have a certain relation to carbohydrate abuse or overuse. So the heart is a muscle, like any other muscle in the body. It starts beating by the time you're in your mom's womb, and it stops basically when you die.
Yeah.
And it needs a lot of resources. It can also run another type of fuel. So you have your fuels would be carbohydrate, which is the known one, but you also have ketones or fats, and the heart actually prefers ketone bodies, but you need to adapt your body to do this. So in the case of this person who was healthy and active, if you are accustomed to having a lot of carbohydrates, you might be suffering from something that's called a TOFI, which is thin on the outside, fat on the inside. And that's actually the worst type of fat you could have, because it's the fat that's around your organs, around your belly, where it's supposed to be. So the fat around the belly, that's the fat you use for survival. So if the winter comes right now, we have no food, we have that fat around our belly, it'll help us survive. But if you have fat around your liver, it'll clog your liver and you'll have other issues. Or you have fat around your pancreas. It can also happen through your tongue, your heart. This fat that's out of place, it's called visceral fat. It'll get you a lot of trouble. So you can see two people that actually, one of them is fat and the other one is thin, but you do a special test where you see the amount of fat in their body, and you might have the fat located in the wrong place. So actually, the adult or the person that is fatter to the eye would probably be metabolically healthier than the one that's thinner. And coming back to this person, he could have had plaque in his artery, and from the long trip sitting, maybe some of that plaque broke loose, and that gave him.
And the lack of movement.
Sure.
Wow.
But
So he probably had the silent killer.
just in his body already, and
He
then
probably had the silent killer, right, without knowing.
Yeah,
exactly. And
it was a big
And
shock.
once
I
a-
remember that. But yes.
they don't check themselves because they're thin. You look yourself in the mirror, you look okay, so
Right.
you go to the doctor, right? So that's why it's important to have a checkup at least every year, especially once you get over 40,
Right.
because hormones play an important role, and hormones start changing as you grow older.
Yeah, and I was going to say,
Well,
I wanted to add, because
go ahead.
one of your questions, Pastor Bill, was, does this categorize as a vascular disease? Yes, this is part of those deaths attributed to cardiovascular disease. This is a clot. Once again, we're talking about a blood having problem to go through the blood vessels, and when the blood flow slows, then the possibility of a clot increases. And if there's plaque, even more chances of developing a clot. And if we are dehydrated, as this man probably was, because you're driving, but you're not drinking water, you're sweating, you're everything. So you start losing water and water and water. And I'm sure if Dr. Romero wants to jump in here, vitamin E might have been the answer for this man. Go ahead, Dr. Romero.
Yes, vitamin E, an antioxidant, but also vitamin C and a baby aspirin for the trip, because you're not going to move.
Right.
A baby aspirin. But very important, Dr. Rodriguez mentioned it. We all forget to drink water. You're driving many hours, sitting the same position for many hours, not drinking, your blood becomes a little bit thicker. And the platelets, the platelet activity is there. What they do is to clot, stimulate clot. And if your blood is dehydrated, is thicker, and you have that a little bit of a risk factor, maybe this man had a risk factor somewhere in there, or like the trip, he had a lot of goodies with salt
Snacks.
and snacks,
Yes.
exactly.
Maybe.
No
Right.
water and no water, that the water could have made the difference. But because
That's
vitamin E,
interesting.
it does help to take it all the time, but you need to take it all the time, and to have the benefit, you need to have been on it for like 2 years to notice a difference.
Oh my.
So the studies
Okay.
reveal that. You don't see a difference before a year. So you have to be on it 400 units every
Wow.
day, constantly, constantly. It will make a difference. And if you're going on
Wow.
a trip, make sure you take vitamin C or take like a baby aspirin for the trip, or 1 week before and 1 week later until you're back home. So that makes a difference.
Okay.
You mentioned also, Dr. Rodriguez, you mentioned getting the blood flowing. So I would imagine that does enter into some kind of activity. I mean, they talk in the exercise world of cardiovascular type of exercise, cardios or whatever they call that. But and that's important also to get the blood moving. Is that
That is
correct?
absolutely essential. I mean, we say life is in the blood. Yes, but blood has to move. If it's
Ah,
if it's stagnant, it's going to very prone to produce a clot, and very prone to produce a problem. So we have to make sure that the blood flows. How we do that? Well, by drinking water, by doing exercise, by keeping a diet with not too many fats, and get this, not too much protein. And by that I mean animal protein. By that I mean that we have always
Right.
this tendency to think that if this is good, more is better. And we I
Mm-hmm.
don't know where we got from, but we now have a 16-ounce steak dinner. That's not for human consumption.
yeah,
Okay, uh, eight
yeah,
ounce
No.
right.
is the recommended amount, and you can enjoy it. You can have fun, and you
Hmm.
can have a very good taste. But you're also being sensitive. We have to be more frugal about food.
Yeah.
We are a society that has access to a lot of food and big quantities and so forth, but we should not
Mm-hmm.
indulge in those habits because they could be deadly. And so we have to be more
Hmm.
careful and say, well, this is what I'm going to eat, and these are my veggies, and these are my legumes, and these are my greens, and this is my meat or eggs or fish that I'm going to have. And beef in particular, we should not exceed 8 ounces per serving. And that's going to keep us in a much better
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
condition. Vitamin E has another big advantage. Not only is it a powerful antioxidant, but also blocks platelet aggregation. So it can help to avoid the clot formation. So that's very good news because it's all natural, no side effects. So it's a win-win situation. And vitamin E, if you're going to make a
Right.
trip of that
Hmm.
kind, absolutely. Also, if you're going to be on an airplane, airplanes today, uh,
Yes.
just recently, can fly for 15 hours. You can fly from
Yeah.
Dallas to Dubai, and that's a 16-hour
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
plus flight. You can fly from
Wow.
Sydney, Australia, to Los Angeles or even to New York. Uh, that's a
Hmm.
huge time sitting, doing nothing. I remember when I started going to
Right.
Hmm.
Seoul, Korea, with a doctor that was working with us at the time. He was a chiropractor and acupuncturist, Dr. Park, and we went to some conference in Korea. And on the flight, he would look at his watch and tell me, Doctor, 2 hours. So stand up. And he had a number of
Yes.
exercises that he and I had to do. That's very smart
Mm-hmm.
because it keeps everything
Yeah.
moving.
Yes.
But if you're going to sit for so many hours, it's bad even if you're in your home in a couch for so many hours. That's why move, walk.
Yes.
The office environment is very important. Stand up, go to a glass of water, and forget to ask somebody to say, uh, I printed something, would you bring it to me? No, stand up and go to the printer. Those few steps, those
Right.
few steps can be life-saving. So we have to take
Yes.
advantage of the possibility of moving around. Uh, I mean, I'm the medical director of the hospital, and many times I'm tempted to say, oh, would you bring me this? Let's say a glass of water. And then I immediately think,
Yeah.
come on, get up, get your glass of water, and come back. You need those steps. But we have to be
Yeah.
Right.
vigilant and aware in order to be helping ourselves.
Definitely.
I noticed that Dr. Artiega, she nodded a lot. Do you have some advice as far as like what should we get our heart rate also to?
Yeah, well, of course, doing exercise will elevate your heart rate, but um, it's been told, or the research or the most recent studies are showing that also increasing your heart rate to more than what you are in sitting down or not doing an activity can also lead to better circulation. I wanted to add that moving around, like in this particular case of this neighbor, probably he just went into the trip, like Dr. Rodriguez mentioned, 15 hours, 16 hours without stopping to move around, to move his
Right.
body, move the legs, stop and charge with gas. So I was nodding because I agree with Dr. Romero. She always is doing emphasis in moving. Move your body, stand from your chair. What you're doing if you work in an office or sitting for a long period of time. Better start, for a few minutes just to increase your blood flow and move it around.
Yeah. Very good.
If I may
suppose
add,
in an office setting, you want to use stairs instead of an elevator. Maybe you do that a little bit more.
Yes, try to also, and not just in the office, but when you go and buy groceries, try to look for the parking that it's the farthest from the store, so you can walk more too.
Yeah.
And
We just started to do that.
Yeah. Good
Right.
point.
It's funny what started it though is someone backed into our car while we were in a store
Yeah.
and we had to have car repairs. So now we make an effort to park further away. So we keep walking.
Two good reasons.
and also
Yeah.
your car
Good
without
reason.
scratches.
Funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something else.
It took
Let me tell
about
you.
3 weeks to get it fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Let me tell you,
Sure.
I like to talk to people, to everyday people with everyday answers. If you want to increase your physical activity, you do not need sneakers, you don't need a suit, you don't need to join a gym. Next time you go to
Right.
the mall, or next time you go to your store, stores today are huge in comparison to what they used to be. So I always tell people, stores are safe, well lit, air conditioned, with a lot of surveillance. So why don't you take your cart and walk around the whole store a couple of times inside while looking at what's on sale or what
Yeah.
things are around, but walk around. It's very safe. And I tell
Right.
people that are older, I say, you're going to have a walker and nobody will notice because your shopping cart, works as a walker.
Oh,
So
funny.
you take
Yeah.
your cart and then you just move around. It's flat, it's clean, it's lit, it's safe, it's everything. So
Mhm.
People can do that. Get to
Yeah.
the store, walk around 2-3 times, and then do your shopping.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Very
really
nice.
good advice.
Yeah.
I like that, especially the idea for people that might feel uncomfortable because they might need a walker or a cane. That cart, that is a really good idea.
Yeah.
I know.
Now, for a person that may have gotten surgery recently, of course, right away, I notice when people get surgery, they want them to get up and start walking as soon as possible. And so, depending on the surgeries, obviously, but is that something that would contribute to a higher blood pressure? And what are some of the things that you would do after a surgery, maybe diet wise, vitamin wise? I think Dr. Romero is probably the expert on those things as far as vitamin and diet. Is that true? Or
For a post-op recovery, yes, the idea is
Yes.
right.
for the patient to start moving as soon as possible. Especially,
Mhm.
actually all surgeries, but mainly surgeries on the abdomen and pelvic area. In orthopedic surgery, it's important that the patient moves as soon as possible, because the same situation, the blood stasis or not moving, the circulation promotes the developing of blood clots. So it's very important that the patient
Mhm.
moves as soon as possible and hydrates the body, hydrating the body. After surgery, you always keep the IV going for a few hours, because it's important for the blood flow too, and to maintain the good hydration. And actually after surgery, like 2-3 hours after the surgery has been carried out and hemostasis has been completed, uh, a lot of surgeons indicate medication to prevent blood clot formation for a couple of days.
Right.
And because it
Right.
is very important, the movement for blood circulation is very important, and hydration.
Right.
I would like to add
Dr.
something to that.
Sabedra?
Yeah. You
Yes, I
Oh, go
was
mentioned.
just
ahead.
going to call on you too.
Sorry, I cut ahead. There is something that happens all the time, and we do not need to be afraid of it. When you start moving, your blood pressure will go up because you are increasing the demands of blood to your muscles. So when you are resting, your heart rate might be 60, 70, 50, depending. Athletes have 30, and your blood pressure might be 90/60. But if you just come in running, you're late to your medical appointment, your blood pressure could be 140/100, and that does not make you a hypertensive patient. The fact that you move after
Right.
surgery will probably make your blood pressure go up. But as Dr. Romero said before, you need to check blood pressure after being at a resting position for at least 10 minutes. Now, other things that will increase your blood pressure would be, for example, taking coffee, and that could increase your blood pressure by 25 points. So there are many situations that increase your blood pressure without it necessarily being a bad thing. But exercise will definitely increase your blood pressure. So you need to relax after the exercise, have your parasympathetic system kick in, you're relaxed, you're rested, then you take your blood pressure. If you check it in the peak of the moment, it'll be high. If you're stressed, your blood pressure will be high. Your sympathetic system is going like crazy, and you're in your fight or flight response. So that makes your blood pressure go up.
And Dr. Saavedra, with your background, and you mentioned coffee, what things do you recommend? We don't drink coffee. I would be too hyper if I drank it. Even a sip causes me great hyper. But
Okay.
what would you recommend, Dr. Saavedra and Dr. Artiego? You haven't chimed
For-
in yet on drinking coffee or diet type of things that would be beneficial or not beneficial? For example,
Okay.
is coffee not a good idea?
It all depends. A certain amount of the population are sensitive to coffee. If you're not sensitive to coffee, you should be good. Myself, I drink a 30-ounce mug of black coffee every morning, and my blood pressure
Oh
is.
my.
But people who have issues with coffee, because they can have high blood pressure or high cardiac rhythm, they could take, for example, green tea, which has catechins and actually is beneficial to the body, but
That's
has a
what I
very
do.
low dose of the caffeine, right? You could take caffeine-free coffee. You know, it has a lot of benefits, but none of the side effects of caffeine, which is the main thing that's wrong with coffee to people who have an issue. But if you have high blood pressure, hibiscus tea is recommended, 1 cup a day. That will actually help lower your blood pressure.
Oh, okay. This is one topic that we haven't touched on, and I think we probably should. Tobacco and alcohol, obviously, it increases the problem or maybe even develops the problem. What would be your thoughts on that? I suppose, Dr. Rodriguez, we should start with you.
Okay. There's always a good part and a bad part of everything, of food, of coffee, alcohol. With everything, there's always some areas where you say, well, it might be good in this circumstance, it might be bad in that one. If you do too much, if you do little, blah, 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 blah. When it comes to tobacco, I think that's a total agreement. You will not be able to find in the medical literature one piece that says cigarette smoking might be good for anything other than cigarette companies. It is one of the big problems of our times. It's a major health problem. To give you one example, there is a country that has it's like at the forefront of life expectancy. That's Japan. In Japan, people are working well into their 80s, and people have a very fantastic survival rate. They tend to grow old. They have been able to conquer past health issues like stomach cancer that used to be very prevalent, but now it's coming down. It's one of the countries where cancer is coming down and down every year. However, everything related to tobacco, they haven't been able uh, to adjust or to improve. So, and they just can't make people to stop smoking. Uh, Cigarette smoking is one of the worst habits you can have. That's why it was forbidden to smoke in front of other person, because secondhand smoke is very bad. So cigarette smoking should be completely banned. I don't know when, but I'm sure it's going to disappear from our lives.
That would be good.
Yeah. Dr. Artiega, I guess you might have some comments.
Well, yes, you were talking about tobacco and alcohol, and well, also alcohol is not beneficial, not just to prevent high blood pressure or a cardiovascular disease, but for any other health issues. And well, what happens is the same as tobacco, alcohol is toxic for the muscle and our cardiac muscle too. So it will lead to high blood pressure or other cardiovascular disease like congestive heart failure or some other heart diseases. And the only way of not of preventing is just quitting on the consumption of alcohol. And well, we've known that also not that, but car accidents or some other brain strokes can also be harmful due to the consumption of it.
Right, right. What about the saying that came out that you should drink red wine daily for relaxation, or that it was supposed to help you? We don't drink
Okay.
at all. I've never,
No,
you
okay.
know,
Let,
but
let me jump on. Let me jump on that thing. Uh, I was telling you there's nothing that you can say good about tobacco. However, if we read the literature about alcohol, it's kind of been a roller coaster. Sometimes you read things that say no, it's definitely bad. Other ones say it's definitely good. Others say, well, it might be good in certain circumstances. Others say different things. And you touch on one of the things that has probably some of the most positive effects, which is red wine. It's supposed to have certain antioxidant substances. It's supposed to be good for you if you do not exceed certain amounts. And by that, I would
Right.
say probably 6 ounces a day of red wine. Now, I tend to be very obedient with the law. And the same way I say that Leviticus is very important to read if you want to plan a good diet, the same way I tell you that in Genesis, God told us, I give you these plants and fruits and animals on the earth for your nourishment and so on, and you have to respect all that. I have always wondered why Jesus turned water into wine and not vice versa. And he
right.
probably
Yeah.
knew something we don't know. And that uh, and I'm not being scientific here, I'm just being intuitive. That makes me think that there must be something about red wine that we do not know. Nevertheless, if you jump into the medical literature, you're going to find pros and cons that are going to give you a number of ideas about it. Same with coffee. And the general consensus should be that if you don't need it, don't do it. Don't look for it. It's not a vitamin. It's not
Right.
anything like that. If you do it, might be good for you. And there are two type of drinks that are naturally fermented, and that's beer and that's wine. If you go to liquors, distilled alcohol, that's a total different ballgame. And for that,
Okay.
I would say absolutely not. But with beer and wine, well, humans have been consuming it probably for the last 8,000 years. So there has to be probably something about it. And I don't think I don't think we are yet medically capable to say yes or no. But in general, I would say
Mm-hmm.
be be very cautious, be smart, don't overindulge. And as you were saying, if I have to have a glass of wine in the evening because it's going to relax me, I would think that would be better than worse. That's for one. And the other
Mm-hmm.
one, yes, it might contain certain antioxidants like resveratrol and certain substances that have given some uh, almost magical possibilities. But I'm not completely against it. Me personally, as a doctor, when
Okay.
I talk to my patients, I many times tell them what I'm telling you.
I just have a comment to make. You mentioned that beer and red wine are fermented. And we had listened to a program by Dr. Ken Johnson on, he's with Prophecy Watchers, and he has a YouTube, I believe. Anyway, he's been studying the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Essenes and their diet and herbal medicine. And he said one of the best things for people is fermented items.
Certain fermented
Certain
items.
fermented items. He mentioned, well, I don't like, what is it, the German sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut and stuff.
But he also mentioned kefir and I can't remember the other one, but fermented seems to be doing something for people for their diets that is
Yeah.
Yeah.
beneficial.
Any
Well, we're getting
something very
close.
important. Something very
Go ahead.
important to know: any fermented drink or any fermented food there is around. It could be sauerkraut, it could be kimchi, it could be some of the fermented drinks might have certain amounts of alcohol,
Mhm.
because alcohol production is one of the natural byproducts of fermentation. So I think we have to think twice before. But as I told you, I don't think there is an absolute medical reason not to drink certain amounts. Of course, uh, being an alcoholic, being drunk, you're losing it every time you drink. And so, there you have all the arguments. But probably
Right.
some small amounts of red wine, I don't have problems with it, particularly if people can handle it. But it depends of
Yeah, I
each
know
and
I
every individual.
cannot.
Yeah.
I
And,
cannot. If I had one or two sips of wine in my 20s, I would not be able to feel right. So I never
Okay.
drank.
We've got to wind down, so I thought maybe if each doctor wants to make comment, we'll start with Dr. Romero. She's been waving her hand, so we'll start with you, and then we'll end up with Dr. Rodriguez and give you final comments.
I don't know if you read the news recently, the last 2 or 3 months. It wasn't the news. Uh, Even a little bit of alcohol will create a decrease in your immunological function. It's not good for your health. You can find it, you can look for the news. That's one. The other, why Jesus converted water into wine? Why? In the beginning of time, it was, especially Renaissance and before that, the Roman Empire and everything. Water could kill you because water was so contaminated. The drinking water,
Right.
people that went to work, instead of water, they gave them beer, but it wasn't the beer that we know now. It had a lot less of alcohol, amount of alcohol,
Mhm.
concentration of alcohol, because water they could get sick. And because they were so active, they wouldn't get drunk, and they were well hydrated. So they had, instead of water, had
Interesting.
beer. And before, probably in the time of Jesus, water was very contaminated. It wasn't a good thing to drink water. You would drink wine because wine wouldn't be contaminated, so it wouldn't make you sick. It would make you drunk if you
Oh,
had a lot of it. But that's the history of alcohol. It's
Mhm.
been there with us since the beginning of time. Even, you know what? Even it's been told that dinosaurs could get drunk because they had fermented fruits, and they could get drunk. So it's crazy, but
oh
it's
my
I mean,
goodness. Oh my
interesting
goodness.
that cavemen also could get drunk when they had this fermented fruits. So it's very
okay.
interesting. The history of alcohol is very
Yeah.
Yeah.
interesting. But basically, I think he
Wow.
converted water into wine because water you could get sick with it. So
Uh,
that's the idea.
okay. Dr. Savira, we'll go to you
Uh,
next for final
I want
comment.
to make a little bit of a comment on beer. I enjoy beer from time to time, but beer, unlike wine, can have purines, and purines can exacerbate a gout condition, for example. So if you need to choose, probably go with wine. From the wines, red wine is the one that has the resveratrol. The other wines don't seem to have that effect. But moderation is important. So 1 to 2 beers or 1 to 2 glasses of wine is okay. Literature shows that if you have more wine before bedtime, you will fall asleep, but your sleep quality won't be as good because you won't reach the deeper levels of sleep. Now, in relation to
Ah,
fermented foods, we've had refrigerators for the last 100 and something years. Before that, people used to ferment a lot because that was the way for them to save food. So kimchi, sauerkraut, and other types of fermented food, kefir, yogurt, they were all these fermented foods that people could have. And fermented foods come with good bacteria like lactobacilli, so they will populate your gut and they will actually be beneficial to you.
Right.
Okay.
And keeping that for cardiovascular, it would be beneficial for your cardiovascular health.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Short
Dr.
chain
Arteaga?
amino acids are produced by bacteria in your colon, and short chain amino acids, they add to your daily energy and are well taken up by your heart.
Good.
Nice. All right. Next, Dr. Arteaga.
Well, yes, red wine is a good source of resveratrol, just not enough with 1 glass of wine, but make sure you don't drink the amount that you need every day, because then you will be drinking about 12 bottles of wine to reach the goals of your resveratrol. And well, watch what you eat. In this case, we're talking about cardiovascular, so watch the sodium on your meals.
Yes. Thank you. That's great. And Dr. Rodriguez for final comments.
Okay, well, you have seen what I was saying when I talked about tobacco. In many areas, you can discuss things. In tobacco, you can't. So stop smoking, for goodness sake. There is no one good thing about it. With alcohol and so forth, well, there's so many ways to get information, so many resources. And if you're going to drink, I would agree with Dr. Saavedra. I would go for red wine, good quality red wine. In other words, a red wine that has not been pushed to get a flavor, but has actually been aged in the right way and fermented the right way. And I don't have anything against it. I have a glass of red wine probably now, I would say probably once a month. Before I did a lot more than that because I could have it 2-3 times a week. But there's also, and this is very important, there's also a genetic capacity to utilize and discard alcohol from your body. That's why some ethnic groups, like Eskimos, for example, and Aboriginal people from Hawaii, they really get sick when you give them alcohol. Not everybody can drink alcohol and be good with it.
Can't.
So you have to find out if you have any, like you were saying, Kathy, if you have any symptoms when you have a couple of sips of red wine, don't do it. Don't do any alcohol because you might not be able to metabolize it right. And then it's going to do a lot more harm than good. So we go back to this situation. We all are individual. And the only universal truth is that you should not smoke. But the other ones, they're nuisances and colors, and there's a palette of things that you have to analyze and learn for yourselves. That's why going to Truth Be Told Radio Network regularly is going to always give you a lot of information, and you can take different points of view to create your own system of self-care.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, and causes people to look into things more, read up on it, and come to their own diet plan and exercise plan.
We've kind of unfortunately ran out of time, but we really appreciate BioCare. I would say if anyone out there would have any issues, health issues or whatever, contact them, get their information. And if it's a serious issue, boy, I wouldn't hesitate going down to BioCare facilities and having them treat me for something. It would be just the way to go. They treat everything. They take you from the top to the bottom, literally. And we just really appreciate all the doctors.
And all your knowledge and
all their
information.
knowledge,
We personally also appreciate it.
Yes, it's been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you.